10. Unwritten mixed martial arts rules. Maybe you've been practicing for a while and have decided to start sparring more frequently. It's a solid start towards improving your training, though. After all, sparring calls for the application of what you've learned in a class as well as quick thinking. There is no doubt that including sparring in your martial arts training can improve both your skill level and your understanding of the various techniques. However, there are some unwritten guidelines that we think you should follow in order to have a successful and secure experience. Why not spend a moment learning what they are? Let's have a look on the 10 unwritten mixed martial arts rules. Number 10. Everyone is free to receive a foul. This is one of those unwritten rules that many have hypothesized a fighter may purposefully exploit for a significant advantage. But if that is the case, they most likely aren't talking about it openly. Based on observational data, this rule states that everyone receives at least one free foul. With very few exceptions, a referee will typically rarely award you a point if you kick your opponent in the junk, poke their eye, etc. The referee may not even stop play the first time you commit the most of these offenses, but if they do, they will issue you a warning, possibly a stern warning, without any further action. Occasionally, many offenses go unpunished. Number 9. You must defeat the champion. It ranks at number 10 because in my opinion, it is the ultimate worst unwritten rule. There are many combatants and fans who disagree with me, but it makes absolutely no sense to me. There is a sizable portion of the community that believes that in order to win the title, you must finish the champion or soundly defeat them. According to this unwritten rule, there are no close calls that should favor the challenger on the cards. Forget the fact that it makes absolutely no sense at all that someone being regarded the winner should be included in the scoring criteria in any way. Number 8. Don't leave a battle due to minor injuries. Do you have an upcoming fight you've been injured while training? Even so, you best drag yourself to the cage since it's an unwritten rule that no one pulls out of fights due to minor injuries. Of course, there is a sliding scale of what many fighters consider to be minor. Fighters have explained in varying degrees of detail that they did have any injury in camp but chose to make the walk nonetheless because they signed a contract, and that's just what you do have surely been seen time and time again. This is partly due to the unwritten rule about excuses. This kind of machismo has frequently backfired. Number 7. No excuses. This unwritten rule feels like everyone who fights very much believes in it, but rarely follows it honestly, so it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. The rule is that you shouldn't offer justifications for your performance in fights unless you say, "I'm not offering any justifications," in which case you're free to list a variety of reasons why. We have repeatedly witnessed this. The phrases "camp didn't go well," "I had a difficult weight cut," "I came in flat tonight," "I was sick as a dog all flight week," "My foot was a balloon" are among the classics. These are some of the subjects that are most frowned upon. We don't want to hear about the ruptured spleen you got in camp apparently because that sounds like an excuse, and those cannot be tolerated. But if you win after a loss, you're welcome to tell everyone what a hero you are by claiming that you had a broken arm or a 6 herniated discs prior to the fight. We don't want to seem like we are making excuses, but we have a natural want to justify our mistakes and explain why we fell short. Which is why so many fighters begin their justifications with the unwritten and hardly observed prohibition against making excuses. Number 6. You wouldn't expect the DQ if you were losing. It is true that this regulation does not appear on every single bout card. It's a relatively uncommon occurrence, but it doesn't mean that fighters don't have strong opinions about it, especially if it happens late in a fight and you were already significantly down, but then you get a major foul that could lead to a decision victory. God help you if you even faintly appear to be milking it in any way, much less concede the victory. If you're unable to continue, you will do everything in your power to prolong the struggle. Number 5. You avoid fighting with your teammates. If you train together, you don't fight each other, and you stay out of each other's way. It's fairly straightforward unwritten rule that many fighters will go to great efforts to uphold. Even though it's an individual sport, you go to any lengths to prevent harming your teammate's career because after all, we're all in it together, and iron sharpens iron. It's a family in the gym. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean everything turns out that way. Workmates occasionally breaching this unwritten rule has resulted in some of the biggest disputes in sports history. It came about because of ambition. Some bouts involving teammates or ex-teammates resulted from two fighters simply ending up on a collision course because there was no way for both of them to be at the top at the same moment. Gyms often become split up by these things. Good examples include John Jones, Rashad Evans, Colby Covington, and George Masvidal. In mixed martial arts, you don't fight your teammate unless it's time to compete for that valuable gold. At that point, it's every man for himself, which is arguably just as true as the rule itself. Number 4, what happens in the gym remains there. I once saw a Chris Nolan interview where he discussed why he never releases outtakes from his films, because he wants his actors to feel free to just go all out in every scene without fear of some goofy take ending up on a compilation online to make fun of them, essentially creating a space for these actors to feel safe about messing up. It was at that exact moment that I understood why fighters get so irritated when former or perhaps even current teammates talk about things that happen in the gym. The sparring session is the closest things to an actual fight, and these stories are frequently relayed to the media by someone who used to train with a fighter who will now face them in a match. The interference is that because I defeated them in sparring, I will also defeat them on Saturday night. There are numerous instances of boxers threatening to make sparring videos available when someone gets knocked out. However, when some fighters are prepared to cross that line, it's just regarded as a cheap shot and a breaking of the holy bond. These are locations where fighters are learning and trying to grow, and they want that to be a place where they may make errors without ridicule from fans. You may already be aware that this unwritten rule is undoubtedly broken, but there aren't many quicker methods to irritate a foe or lose the respect of your peers in the sport. Number 3, no fake glove contact. Of course, I'm talking about the fight opening glove touch. You're more than welcome to reject it, but we have seen plenty of instances where two fighters who utterly despise one another don't even bother to try. It's like saying the killing curse in Harry Potter. Once done, there's no getting back that piece of your soul that's gone. It is understood as such that you don't get attacked in the corner during a fight, which is essentially the same thing and why this unwritten rule exists. In the end, it's just cheap. You didn't beat someone, you tricked them. Yes, fighters needs to be constantly aware, but that moment that reaching out of hands is a mutual gesture of respect that puts the fight on hold for just that moment. Number 2, you don't make fun of family. Will Smith once said to a shocked Chris Rock, "Keep my wife out of your mouth." The same cannot be true for an MMA match, in which you are nearly certain to catch at least 1 or 2 hands. For this reason, some fighters would be ready to violate the unwritten MMA rule against talking crap about people's families, or anything else irrelevant to the match. And while it's realistic to believe that you won't catch hands while performing as a comedian giving G.I. Jane jokes at the Academy Awards, the same cannot be true for other fields. Although some people may be cool with it these days because you're dead in the octagon tomorrow night, it appears we've exceeded some threshold. There is always a loud outcry and condemnation from fighters, fans, and media alike whenever family is brought up during trash talk in the lead up to a fight. Number 1, missing weight is unacceptable. There aren't many things in mixed martial arts that everyone can agree on, but missing weight being one of the worst things you can do as a fighter is definitely up there. It makes sense too, because the other fighter has to make weight. They usually do it, but it's rare that both parties miss. And they probably had to go through a very uncomfortable experience in order to make that weight. So when their opponent steps on the scale and comes in 5 pounds over it immediately, sparks resentment. I have yet to see a sportsperson or a media figure seriously defend the practice of missing weight. The weight cut is reportedly the hardest part of the job, so when a fighter skips out on that, in some cases, it enrages them. Fighters will defend themselves for skipping weights and give whatever excuse they see fit, though occasionally, real legitimate concerns may occur, even if many other thresholds are passed in a time when many of the unwritten norms of the past are no longer strictly adhered to by a good portion of fighters prepared to cross those lines. There is still a lot of shame attached to missing weight, and that's not likely to change. These, therefore, are some of the unwritten MMA rules. What do you think of them? Is it truly necessary for fighters to adhere these, or everything is fair in love and war?